welcome from my side to you, all of you. I'm happy to see you and you join our meeting today. It's on pests and diseases. My name is Cecilia Antoni. I'm part of the Global Bean team, but I'm also part of the Global Bean network with my own brand, BeanBeat. And today we invited guest speakers from around the world. From you will see soon in a second. We invited them for exchanging and to see their insights from their countries. So please, the next slide, please. This is our again agenda for today. It's will be quite busy, and we hope we can exchange a lot, and also we ask you for your experience at the end, and it will be, I hope we will have a nice gathering about this very serious topic. And yeah, we will have we cover large scale to small scale farming, also to kitchen gardens from Europe to Africa to India, from farmers and to scientists. And at this point, I already want to thank all our guest speakers for contributing their knowledge and their time for us. And before we start, I also want to leave a word, because pests and diseases are part of our ecosystem, and therefore we are interested in ecological friendly solutions. Next slide, please. And yeah, the climate crisis is reshaping our biodiversity, and the loss of harvest is worldwide problem, and it's because it's rising. And in some parts of the world, there are already 25 or up to 25% of the harvest of beans are already lost. So there are actually more insects coming because of the warmer temperatures, and the winters are not so cold anymore. So the pests survive, and they go in regions where they haven't lived before. And we have some solutions, so we will also present. I'm not the total solution, but we start slowly by slowly. But yeah, the next slide, please. And first, we would like to invite you, because we would like to get some information also of you, because we would like to exchange with you. And we have only 3 little questions.
So you can connect on your phone, for example, and enter to the link I sent in the chat, and enter where you're from. So we have Bavaria, Berlin, Freiburg, a lot of German, UK, Camilla from Italy as well. She put in the chat. So we have a lot of European participants today. Okay, I think you can go to the next question. Okay, well. And for those of you who garden, which legume bugs, pests, or diseases have you already encountered in your garden? Slugs, maybe? I know there are a lot of slugs in German garden, at least. Oh, so Nicola says bean weevil, anthracnose, mildew. Oh, a lot of diseases. Bean weevil, yeah. Spider mites, yeah, a lot of diseases. Socia botrytis. Red mites, Barb says red mites. Okay, so I'm sure we'll, oh, and slugs. So there are slugs indeed. So I'm sure we'll get to Blattläuse, which is the word is not coming to me right now, but it's the thing that ladybugs eat. Erbsenwickler, which is pea weevil. Okay, so quite a diverse array. Black fly on broad beans from Eva Kemp. So I'm sure there's some of these will come up in the presentation later, and I leave Cecilia to go through it. over to you, Cecilia.
Yeah, thank you so much that you took part of this, that we could do a better image who is actually on the other side, and we can exchange better. So we start with our first guest speaker, which is Werner Vogt-Kaute. He is very experienced in organic farming. He's actually working for Naturland, which is in Germany, organic association. And he's also involved in many international projects, and also part of the LegoNet team. And yeah, I would, Werner, if you'd like to start, it's yours now.
Yeah, thank you very much, Cecilia, for introduction. You also said everything. So Cecilia is also part of the LegoNet in Germany, which is the network for promoting cultivation and also use of grain legumes, of domestic grain legumes in Germany. Next slide. So the big four grain legumes in Middle Europe here are peas, fava beans, lupins, and soybeans. The peak in peas in cultivation was in the 90s, as you see, and in the fava beans it was in the 80s. That's something you cannot see on the table because it was earlier. So we also had more than 100,000 hectares of fava beans in the 80s. So, but you see on the table that the production of the big four grain legumes is quite stable. It's increasing, and you see that soya is a new player here. 20 years ago, soya was almost 0 hectares in Germany, or less than 1,000, and in the meantime it's number 3. That's a result, of course, of climate change, because it gets warmer, and it's also a result of better varieties. Next slide. Well, as we in organic agriculture, we have to grow, and we like to grow legumes, both grain legumes and clover. So we also know about the diseases quite well, and this is the worst case that I show you in the beginning. This is a pea field with Mycosphorella or Foma disease. And everything that is green here on the picture are weeds, and everything that is yellow are the peas. And this is the whole field. And we'll tell you later what happened there. Next slide. Yeah, what happened that you need to have a cultivation break when you grow legumes, both grain legumes and clover, and peas are the most susceptible crop, and for peas you need to have the longest cultivation break compared to others. And that was something we did not know. That was something that was not written in literature. So many farmers grew peas every 6 years, and this did not work, and so the production failed when the farmers did it several times with this rotation. And the same happened also in France or in US. That's not a German problem, but of course it also depends on climate. The wetter and the milder the climate is, the more problems you can have with soil-borne diseases. You see that soya is in this question one of the winners. So because soya can be grown relatively often, the cultivation break in soya is in most cases 2 years. That means that you can grow soya every 3 years. So this is of course another positive aspect of soya, and also an aspect that didn't make soya so much everywhere, so big in the world. Next slide. So the soil-borne diseases that are important in Middle Europe are the so-called Ascochyta complex, which is in most cases Mycosphaerella and Foma. And these diseases usually destroy the whole field. This is something typical. If you see only parts of the fields like circles being infected, that can be fusarium disease. If you see pink roots, or it can be aphanomyces, or if you have white roots. Even worse, because aphanomyces is the most dangerous soil-borne disease, because in this case you even have to increase your cultivation break to about 10 years. Then you can grow peas again. And there are also some non-specific diseases that can originate from soil, like Pythium or Rhizoctonia solani, which is usually a potato disease, but also can attack peas. So peas are the most sensible crop of the grain legumes, and you should be aware of this. But if you're aware of this, of course, peas, you will have fun with your peas. But you need to have the cultivation rate. Next slide. Yeah, so other grain legumes are not that much affected by soil-borne diseases, but nevertheless, you have to know about that and need to still have the cultivation break. Beans and lupins usually are attacked by fusarium if you grow them too often. Soya can have sclerotinia, which is not a disease of the other grain legumes, but can be carried by sunflower, cruciferia, or carrots. Then the aport and phomopsis are also soil-borne diseases, but they're also carried by seeds or influenced by weather. And the next important fact that you need to know is that you also can have an interaction of different crops in diseases. That means if you grow clover and the next year you grow peas, well, that's of course not a good idea, because you already have the nitrogen from the clover, but it would be it would affect the peas, and the peas will get ill because of probably some unspecific diseases. So you also have to be aware of other crops. And you need to find out the right amount of grain legumes and legumes in total in your rotation, not only of the main crops, also you have to also think about the intercrops. And there is a limit in that, except more or less except soya, because soya is not in connection with the typical grain legumes diseases in Middle Europe, and you can grow soya extra. Next slide. Yeah, here you can see a picture of sclerotinia, which is so this white thing. Next slide. And here phomopsis. Next slide in soya. So there are also, I've already mentioned this interaction with other crops, especially on peas, but also on beans and lupines and clover if you grow too many. Next slide. Yeah, there are also seed-borne diseases in grain legumes that you should know, and the most dangerous seed-borne disease is Coletotrichum, also called anthracnose, in lupines, which can destroy the complete harvest. Well, depending on weather, but if you have one seed infected in 1,000 seeds, then your whole field can be destroyed. So it can be so aggressive. And Coletotrichum had the result that the production of white lupins and yellow lupins was almost given up in some countries, Germany, Poland, or countries around. Now, disease-tolerant varieties are available in the meantime. This was a question for plant breeding. So the production of white lupins increases again. But this was a real problem. So if somebody grows lupins, white lupins or yellow lupins on larger scale, I would recommend always to check the seeds whether it's free of Coletotrichum. And I would send the seeds to Arges in Austria because they have the best lab. Don't test it in Germany. Peas, well, in the meantime, that also German labs are working on that, but 10 or 20 years ago, there was no knowledge about it. So in peas, there's also the Ascochaeta complex, but not causing huge problems, but reducing germination. Here a picture of Coletotrichum, that if you see some leaves looking strange, like a corkscrew or having a strange behavior, that can like you see on the picture a little bit, some leaves are looking strange, and this should make you nervous if you see this in the field. So, of course, there are also diseases depending on weather, and that's in many cases also influenced by the variety. If you have a peas variety that are not adapted to a rainy climate, you will have bacterial diseases. So that has a consequence that pea varieties from south of Europe probably cannot grow in north. The most extreme case are chickpeas that are very nice crop in many countries in Europe, but if you grow it in middle of Europe and they get some rain, they will die because of Ascochaeta or Fusarium. So that's so the chickpeas are a crop for dry regions. The drier the weather is, the better. So there are also some rusts that do not cause a huge influence, but they can reduce the yield if the rusts come to it. Yeah, next slide. Yeah, that's not a direct problem, but it's a slide that I wanted to show. That's Cuscuta. That's a parasite that you should know, that is that can appear in whole Europe, and the parasite usually prefers to grow on clover, as you see on this picture, because the seeds of this parasite of Cuscuta do have the same size as clover seeds. But if there are in your soil, they can kill all the dicotyledonous plants. So they also will kill weeds and all the plants. So the Cuscuta was one of the two reasons why in the end of 19th century the seed laws were introduced in Europe to control seeds to be free of Cuscuta. So that's something I wanted to tell you, so that you are aware of this plant. If you see this this parasite carried out of the field immediately, so because it's really a dangerous thing, and I know that some farmers in some countries do have real problems. Next slide. So now to the pests that unluckily also exist in the grain legumes. Here, the bruchus, the beans and peas beetles. Well, the more beans and peas you have in the region, the more beetles you will have. But unluckily, especially the beans beetles can fly 15 kilometers. So so you probably cannot avoid to have them. But if you have too many, this would be a problem for production of beans and peas for human consumption, or also for peas, for seeds. Next page, next slide. Yeah, aphids already mentioned in the introduction. Aphids can cause you not only the black, also the green ones can cause you losses of yield. But the more dangerous thing is that they also can carry viruses, and including nanoviruses, which is a growing problem, especially under climatic change. Next slide. Yeah, here you see some effects of viruses. The plants affected by viruses are usually look quite yellowish, and are smaller. And you see in the field that only some parts affected, that were some parts where the infection started, like circles from one plant. Next page, next slide. Yeah, the weevil also was mentioned, so I would also like to mention the Latin names, but because I'm not always sure whether everybody uses the same words in English, even especially if not being a native speaker. So Citona is a beetle that eats leaves, as you see on the picture, like stems. You see the leaves look like stems. But the more dangerous effect is that the larvae eat the nodules of the legumes, which is really not a good habit of this beetle, because in this case you also lose your nitrogen that the legumes should produce. So check your plants whether you have problems with larvae, but if you have larvae beetles at the leaves, that does not mean that you have larvae at the nodules automatically. So you always have to check. Next slide. Yeah, the peanut Cydia is more a problem for the gardeners in vegetable peas. In arable production, you have losses of yield, but no other effect. But for gardeners, the losses are higher. And this is especially for gardeners who want to horticultural farms who want to produce for freezing peas for freezing, that then this could be a huge problem. Next slide. Yeah, then the soya, there's more soya in grown, so this means also the pests arrive. The Cynthia, the painted lady butterfly, is the most important one at the moment. So also called in German, it's called thistle butterfly, because its favorite feed are thistles, which is nice for organic farmers. But the second favorite is soya. And so it means first the larva eats the thistles and then the soya. They usually arrive from southern Europe, coming from the southern wind over the Alps, and this is something that can happen, especially if you're in south of Germany and and close to the Alps. The more south you are, the more problems you can have. It can be worked with Bacillus thuringiensis against the larvae. Next slide. Yeah, in southern Europe, the green stink bug is an increasing problem, but we see that and the green stink bug seems also have to have a preference on soya. And with the climate change, of course, this bug is also moving northwards. Yeah, so that was something from my side, that you see which diseases and pests are the most important ones in Middle Europe.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much, Werner. It was great. And I was just checking the chat if I see some questions, and I saw something there that's like a comment. It's not a question. There's a modern cleaning by optical sorter necessary and possibly by the seed companies. That's right. Yeah. And I look further. If I overlook something, just I will look.
Yeah, I did not mention the strategy against the diseases, except the cultivation break, which is of course important. But of course there are several strategies also in organic, like we will hear something later, like tolerant varieties, also. But in some, or spraying Bacillus thuringiensis, but in not all cases we have solutions, like in the bean beetle, the Bruchus. There we have no solution up to now.
Yeah, that's a good point. We will listen about this later on. We hear from that. And there's also a question about the Vicia fava. We'll come back to this later on. So yeah, thank you so much, Werner. And we go now to Africa, to Ethiopia. And I very welcome Dr. Amanuel Samuel. He is coordinator of the agriforestry in rural Ethiopia. And yeah, please introduce yourself, because I think I have forgotten something. You are such an active person, and yeah, let us know.
Thank you very much for this meeting. And I'm Amanuel Samuel from Ethiopia. Nowadays, I'm working in Gardulla, a local civil society organ, which is established by the local community, and solving those problems of the community. So we are, because unstable. That's why I was off. So we will see some of the insect pests and diseases affecting the common bean in Ethiopia, and finally we can see the eco-friendly mechanisms, or eco-friendly or natural ways to manage those pests. Practically what we are doing. So next page. Common bean, which is Phaseolus vulgaris, is in a multi-purpose leguminous here in Ethiopia, with high nutrient content, and in terms of production and area of productivity, it is kind of early maturing seed, and also we use here the most staple food in Ethiopia, as if you have the exposure to see Ethiopia, we use injera, bawot, and Maybe next time I can explain it. But the south at the center of the injera is most of the time is produced from legume, especially the pea is we call atar. The pea is used for producing the sauce at the center of the injera, and sometimes not sometimes most of the time we mix those powder from pea and lentils together to make Ethiopian shiro. What we call the English version sauce. So it is very important for Ethiopians. Most of the time it's produced in the central and western part of the country. Production of bean is more important. Maybe in case of it's medicinal and health aspects. It provides amino acids like folic acid, and it can more recommended for diseases such as cancer and diabetes or coronary heart diseases. Common bean producers are more around the central, northern, and western part of the country, because the soil is good for it. It keeps moisture. That's why the production is in those areas of the country. Next page. Next slide. Sorry. Factors that impact on common bean increasing production. It is more diversified due to it is good source of food and income. It also improves soil fertility. That means it fixes. It is a nitrogen fixer plant for the soil. We also use in our garden for intercrop. We use as a companion planting with maize and sorghum because they need much nitrogen from the soil. So once the legume or the bean is planted around those maize and sorghum, it fixes nitrogen for maize as well as for sorghum. It has a wider adaptation, the other point, and early maturity. And as I mentioned before, it can be used for as intercropping. It is practiced in eastern and around Rift Valley of Ethiopia. We call the Rift Valley areas more favorable. There is more arable land. The East African Rift Valley, as you know, it crosses Ethiopia. So those areas around the Rift Valley. I'm also on the part of the Rift Valley, part of Ethiopia. So when we see Ethiopia, most of the arable land of the country is found in these places. So those common beans are also practiced in Rift Valley parts of Ethiopia. Next. One thing that I forgot is it can survive in harsh conditions. In the places there is shortage of. So also in the seasons where there is shortage of rain, we plant those legumes because they need a little bit rain. They didn't receive much rain, so they can easily grow in the season. I got some statistical data from Central Statistic Agency of Ethiopia from 2016. I think it is much long year, but for your information, almost 113,000 hectares of land have been covered with white bean, and 244,000 hectares of land have been covered with red one. A total of 357,000 hectares of land have been covered by both beans. When we see the production, it has been 540,000 tons per hectare have been produced. in 2016. I was checking the recent data, but I didn't find any data mentioning those productions and area cover. The most challenges of common production in Ethiopia, when we see this one, there is absence of extension services. In especially there are in each village, or we call the smallest government structure kabale, that they have small farmer training centers in each kabale. So those there is absence of linked extension service in those farmer training centers. The other one is climate change. This is a global issue, not only for Ethiopia. And insect pests and diseases are the most challenges common in the production of Ethiopia. Next. So when we see the major insect pests and diseases in common bean here, bean stem maggot, or it is a fly, a bean fly, is the most the major insect pest which is affecting bean in Ethiopia. Of course, there are species of this bean fly, especially the Spincerella and Centrosomatis. They cause 80 to 100% of the yield loss here in Ethiopia. The other one is aphids or aphids fava, and damages beans in areas where lowland areas of the country, especially cowpea, and has ability to transmit bean mosaic virus. Next. Yeah, these are the pictures I took from the literature review. Next. The other one is diseases which are common for common beans. The common bacterial blight. It is also one of the diseases affecting common beans here, and it causes 10 to 45% yield loss of beans in Ethiopia. The other one, angular leaf spot, ALS. It has more impact on the production of the beans. Its yield loss is more than the common bacterial blight, which is around 80% loss. It was network problem, and this is also a picture for angular leaf spots. Next. Yeah. When we come to the control measures, one is the basic one is in agronomical practices like site selection, and yeah, this is a common practice. Crop rotation, seed selection, especially this one, preferential sowing date is and intercropping are control measures categorized under agronomical practices. The one, especially sowing date, is early sowing has positive effects on production improvements, while negative for aphids effects. So sowing date is very important here. Next. Biological and botanical control measures. The biological, this spinosad and Bacillus thuringiensis, I can't spell, but this theoretically it is known, but practically it needs much research here in Ethiopia. In case of botanical, a mixture of bioactive compounds like have in terms of efficacy, they have a short span and preventing the development of resistance. Insect control agents like nicotine isolated from tobacco, neem oil, and other extracts such as Vernonia, croton, eucalyptus globules. Among those, we have been practicing in our garden like eucalyptus globules and some mixture of some ornamental plants that have been pest repellent, having high what we call high odor or something. Odor. We mix those like basil, mint, and we just intercrop or we plant companionly those plants like rue, basil, and other ornamental plants around the bean. So they have, strong odor. As a result of this odor, those insect pests are unable to attack those beans. So this is practically here in our GPD as well as Gamole, the training center garden. So most of the time we didn't use chemical pesticides in our. We didn't use chemical pesticides in our garden. Rather, we use the organic ones. So this one is much better for defending those beans from insect pests and diseases. Because if we are using a chemical one, it has a residue on the plant body parts. Once we ate those plants, we will be more exposed for those extracts of ingredients of the chemical. And the other one is, our small scale farmers are not, it is not affordable to buy for our small scale farmers from economical point of view. So those biological and botanical as well as agronomic way of managing insect pests is better. Next. No, one page. Next. Integrated IPM. Integrated pest management, it is already known. Management integrating two or more recommended protecting technologies. It's highly recommended. Even in our agroforestry project, we recommend our small scale farmers. Especially, we have a plan to train and equip 7,000 small scale farmers. Among this, we already achieved 3,000. So we highly recommend them to use integrated pest management because this one conserves fauna and flora of the environment. It is also eco-friendly and reduces environmental pollution. The other one is, as I mentioned before, economically affordable for small-scale farmers. So the most important one that I would like to underline is integrated pest management. Next. Thank you very much for attending my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Amanuel, for your great presentation and for all the information. That's so interesting. Thank you. So now we move to India, and because of the time shift in India, our partner Lopamudra Sahu can't be with us. I think it's in the middle of the night in India right now, and so she sent me all her information, and I will present it to you shortly now. And she's from the Edible Roots, which is one of the largest organic farming organization in India. And she sent me her solutions already that I found out for them. So they had actually two cultivation systems. One is the companion planting, And they do it in a way that they plant 2 crops together, 2 beans and corn together. And the beans attract actually some insects that that will eat the corn pests, like the leaf hooper and the leaf beetles. And the bean also can use the corn for climbing. So it's a really good combination to plant these 2 together. And the next one, that is more a traditional multi-cropping system. And they use actually 6 different crops all together in one space. It's ginger, turmeric, chili, pigeon pea, arby, and corn. And that's very effective because some of there are different families, but some of their crops, they cover the soil, so it won't dry out so fast. And you have the whole year around, you have some supply of products. So it's a really good combination. And yeah, and it's because the plants have different needs, but they still can combine it very well. And the next slide, please. And then she also sent me her best products for pest control. And she said the chili pepper and the garlic spray works really good for them, and the buttermilk spray, I've never heard of that before, and also the neem oil, also Amanuel just mentioned that. I know that we also in Germany use it. So that's from India, and now we go to Germany again, and I would like to introduce you to Johann Huber. He is actually working on a research project on the fava bean. And the fava bean, you know, that's the oldest bean in, actually it was it's not a native bean to Europe, but it has been planted for more than, I think it started 300 to before Christ. So we have it a long time, and it was the only bean for many, many centuries. And it was used as for human food, but also for animal feed. But in Germany now we have like a problem with some bug, and Johann will speak about this.
Yeah, thank you, Cecilia, for the introduction, and hello everybody. Thanks for having me. As already mentioned, I'm Johann Huber, and I'm working on the improvement of seed quality on fava beans, but the biggest problem is the broad bean beetles. Yeah, Puchus rufimanus. So next slide, please. Thank you. Well, fava beans are getting more and more important again. They were very important for many, many years and decades, but now they are gaining their importance back, and there are several reasons for it. Of course, political promotions, and to some extent also financial supports for farmers. Then, of course, the demand on high protein crops from domestic production is increasing here in Germany as well as in many other European countries. And organic farming is expanding, and it's expanding very quick, especially in Bavaria, where we are sitting. And of course, also conventional farmers are using the positive effects fava beans are bringing in their crop rotations, because in these times, plant protection is very restricted and getting more and more restricted, actually. But this altogether means that the demand on high quality seeds is rising, and we have to supply this demand, and that's a problem. Of course, here to mention, there are also new markets for human consumption, and with therefore we need beans that are not infested. But we come to this later. So next slide, please. Yeah. Okay. The graph is not complete, but that doesn't matter. It's just some data I collected from FOStat, to show you the massive gain the cropping area of fava beans had in Europe, in the EU, and also the UK. So we can go on to the next slide, please. Well, fava bean seed production is not that easy. There are, again, several reasons for it. Of course, all legume seeds, especially fava beans, are very sensitive on mechanical impacts. And if we're not cautious while harvesting, there are so-called hairline cracks inside the beans. And the main thing is they are not even visible for human eyes. So the water content while threshing is crucial here. There's a small range, small optimum range of about 16 to 18%, and water contents lower and higher are very, very damaging on the germination actually. And then today's topic, we have infestation with the bruhits, with Bruchus rufimanus, in this case, the broadbean beetle. So as a consequence, depending on last season's climatic conditions, high quality fava beans are rare and therefore expensive. And that's a problem for many, many farmers here in Germany and other countries. Yeah, thank you for moving on to the next slide. Here are some impressions. You can see the pest, the little bugs, the broadbean beetle, and the damage he does to the beans. Okay, so we can move on. Next slide, please. Well, yes, the broadbean beetle, these bruhits are a univoltine species. Thank God they are. There are other seed people too infesting beans in more tropical areas, and they are storage pests actually, but not this one. This one is a pure field pest, so there is neither feeding nor reproduction in storages. So meanwhile, in our times, the pest is ubiquitous in most European countries and also in many temperated regions worldwide. And that's because he's benefiting from climate change and the changes that belong to it. Of course, maybe not of course, but a second problem is that there's a lack in natural antagonists in the fields. Maybe because of insect deaths. It's okay. Yeah. Well, as Werner mentioned before, sorry. There are many common names and for this pest. So here are a few examples, and you can probably take 2 or 3 of them, combine them, and have a common name that is used somewhere in the world. So let's move on. Next slide, please. Yeah. So the life cycle of the bruhits. This is where we are right now. So the bruhits either emerge from the beans and search for their overwintering habitats, or they stayed in the beans. Maybe they have to complete the life cycle, or they're just waiting for next year's spring to warm up the temperature outside, and for the crucial stimuli they need to leave the beans. So migration to the fava bean fields starts when the beans are flowering, and then first the male come to colonize the fields, and then the female come. And ovipositioning starts as soon as the first pods, very small pods, are appearing, and it lasts till flowering has ended about 10 days. Yeah. So the larvae, they bore themselves in the bean, and they are developing in the beans. So they are protected all the time by seed coats and the husks, and it's very, very difficult to control these larvae, as they are the damaging stage in the bruhit life circle. And then it all starts again and again and again in the new year is there. So next slide, please. Yeah. We here in at the LFL, at the Bavarian Research Center for Agriculture, started planning our field trays in 2019. And there was actually a first series already completed. We had from 2019 to 2091 yearly 6 field trays, 3 of them organic and 3 of them in conventional cropping system. And what we did there is the introduction of natural enemies. Yes, in our case, it was Larifago distinguendus, one of these parasitoid wasp that were further discussed in the chat. And we also performed plant protection based on neem oil in our organic trays. In the conventional trays, on the other hand, we applied convenient insecticides, and we also had late sowing variants. Each of our tested strategies was one time sown with beetle-free seeds and one time with infested seeds. And on top of that, we were highly interested in the differentiation of both overwintering strategies. So the overwintering in freelance and in stored beans. And what we did to get data on this topic is we housed plots, as you can see it on the picture. So next slide, please. Thank you. So, but what's about the damage these bruids do to bean and bean production? Well, actually, we didn't get any impact on bruid infestation on yield or on the 1,000 seed weight. It's something that goes along with quite new literature from maybe the last 4 years, 5 years. Older literature is suggesting quite high yield losses. So that's not the damaging part. The damaging part is the strong linkage between bruid infestation and seed quality, namely germination. And actually, these infested beans are not dead, but there's a quite high chance of them to grow seedlings that have to be classified as abnormal following the ISTA rules. So there is a high economic loss for seed producers, and in a second stage also for farmers, because they have to pay higher prices for the seeds. We also, or our data sets also show quite nicely that the damage done by bruids immigrating to the fields from the overwintering habitats is much more higher than from bruids that overwintered in stored beans. Actually, this effect of bruids in stored beans is only measurable in years when climatic conditions are hampering the development of the bruid populations in the field. But the big question now is, what about beans for human consumption? Because many people don't want to eat beans where a beetle lived or is still in, maybe dead or alive. Yeah. Now about So I already mentioned there's a high linkage between germination and bruid infestation. Yeah, but these bruids actually are not reducing the germination directly, but indirectly via ensuring the seed coats. So seed coats have many natural functions for the seeds and for seed development. Very important, the protection against fungal diseases, seed or soil-borne, and seed coats also control the imbibition speed. So the speed with which the beans are taking up water, actually, and both of these functions are reduced. So that's what leads in the second stage to abnormal seedlings. And of course, the mechanical stability is further decreased when these holes are in the beans. So this means as a consequence that the degree of seed quality reduction caused by bruchid infestation is highly depending on the seed's origin and of course on climate conditions. Next slide, please. Yeah, okay, that there is some kind of problem with my slides. I hope it doesn't matter. That they're, yeah, I have, or I can provide the original ones if somebody likes to see them. Here are some examples for the infestation patterns the bruchids leave in the seeds. So here we see healthy beans, fava beans, and all the others are infested. Here, this classic emerging holes. The second picture, I'm sorry, you're not, you can't see my cursor, but I hope it doesn't matter. And before the beetles leave the beans, you can see this yeah, we call them windows, kind of translucent larval holes still covered by seed coat. And that's where the beetles hide. So the bruchid is, yeah, he's hiding in the bean beneath these windows, and when he's ready to emerge, he's biting off seed coat and then he leaves. On the picture in the second row on the right, on the left, sorry, you can see also emerging holes, but not from bruchids, but from parasitoid wasps. In our case, Larifago distinguendus, but there are many other species also that also parasite bruchids like the broadbeak beetle. And of course, beans are not restricted to one beetle, but there also can develop more than one one beetle in the bean. So next slide, please. Yeah, some examples for these abnormal seedlings we observe in our germination laboratory. So the picture on the left, you can see these cracks in sprouts and roots, and the other picture so yeah, fungal infections causing plant tissue to die. So these seedlings have no way to grow yield bringing plants we want to see in the fields. So next slide, please. Yeah, but now what to say to seed producers? What are advices they can use to ensure higher seed quality? Well, the heterogeneity of bruchid infestations in the field is quite high, and that's because they are immigrating from the borders each year. So these edge regions are more high, the infestation in these edge regions is very high combined to the central areas in the fields. So what we can do now is we can harvest one or two combine harvest with common beans. That the term is not good here. I know what I mean here is beans for forage purpose, for example. And we can use bigger fields for seed production, especially for legume seed production, because these fields have a more favorable relationship between the area, the total cropping area, and the border length. Then, as already mentioned, there are more and more ectoparasitic antagonists appearing also in conventional fields and regions. So when farmers see them, you can see them with the emerging holes are much lower, much smaller, as we saw in the picture a few slides before. And and then they should really watch out that their managements in the fields are insect friendly as possible. And another point is seed treatments. The post-harvest management, there's a big potential there. We're working on it, but I have no data because of the lack of time. So next slide, please. Yeah, so a quick look forward. It's my last slide. I hope you don't get nervous. We can go on soon. What we do now is we are high pressure developing a kind of push-pull strategy against these bruits. So we're using a trap that was introduced by Bruce et al. 11 years ago, but we advanced this trap kind of a little bit, and we combine it with a special repellent. It's a sand plant. We want to use to apply in the fields to lower bruit infestation, and it worked actually. Also, we are interested in in alternative application method because of cropping specific issues. So what we have now is a 2-year field trail. This year and next year, then my project is ending at the end of next year, and we used 2 regions in Bavaria, therefore with very high bruit infestation pressure. So one field trail is quite big, with a total area of 0.6 hectare, and it's a split plot design in which we test each repellent with and without the trap we developed. Yeah, and we're also interested so we're testing if it's enough to protect the field borders, or if the total cropping area has to be applied with our repellents to have sufficient results. So next slide, please. There we are supported by the Bundesministerium for Landwirtschaft und Ernährung, Federal Ministry for Food and Agriculture, and we'd like to thank them, of course, and all the other people and institutions involved in the project. So next and last slide. Thank you for your attention, and if there are any questions, feel free to contact me, or maybe a short one is still in the time management possible. I don't know. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much, Johann. That was a great insight in your study, and you can also write in the chat where we can see the results when the study has ended.
Yeah.
So much.
Thank you.
I would like, because the time is running, I would like to give the word to Nicolas, because I saw in the chat that he is already has to leave, but he wants to say something. So please, Nicolas, the word to you.
I just wanted to introduce briefly the next monthly meeting. Can you show the slide?
Oh, yeah.
It's a little bit later. It's going to be a round table about successful initiatives in growing and selling pulses. Can you please try to find the slide?
It's the last one, I think.
So we are going to have a few successful initiatives. It can be farmers, processors of pulses, or retailers, and some researchers talking about their projects, asking the question, what can make local initiatives successful at increasing cultivation and consumption of pulses? So it's going to be quite interactive with a roundtable of specialists, and I'm very happy to have secured already the participation of Josiah from Hot Methods, which is a really inspiring small business in England, pioneering lots of nice pulse crops with interesting farmers. So please join us on the 15th of November. The date is not on the slide, sorry for that. The 15th of November. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nicolas, for this information. That will be the next public session meeting. And we move back to Anna. Anna,
yeah, I'm here.
Okay, yeah, please, Anna.
I'm not directly, literally in travel, but I'm not at home. Okay, so after all these fascinated high-class lectures, I just want to share with you my experience. It's not exactly my kitchen. Here's my friend. It's not exactly my kitchen garden, but a garden where we grow some small batches of all varieties. We just make some kind of experiments and so on. And I was struggling. Well, I will speak about slugs, right? And I was struggling with slugs for quite a long time because we're trying to cultivate our heirloom bean. And I will just share my screen now. And then I will, yeah, great, super. I will just tell, it's a very short story. Okay, and these are a few photographs, and it's from the beginning where there was a little plot because we were experimenting with another batch of seeds of our heirloom beans. And the thing that we did, that I just made, I call it catering for slugs. So I just started to feed them because I couldn't, I didn't have time. I don't have time, and I don't want to, go to my garden and to collect slugs by hand. It's boring. And because I buy cabbage, but I don't use the outer cabbages, the outer leaves. So I usually discharge these leaves into compost. And I just had an idea that especially in this very primer stage where the beans, with the seedlings, they are quite small. They are like 15 centimeters. They are a real treat for slugs. And I started to put these outer cabbage leaves right under the seedlings. And what happened is that slugs were totally interested in the cabbage, and they just left our beans. They stopped eating our beans, and it concerns all the slugs, not only these big ones, black or browns, but also these small ones, which are very, very bad, I would say. And it may look, I'm not saying it's a solution for a big cultivation, for the big farm, but I just had a thought that maybe we should change somehow. In some cases, we should change our thinking about how to deal with slugs. Because if we feed them, they gather literally probably all the slugs from the neighborhood. They all came along at night when I went to the garden at night. It was, crowded. It was brown with slugs. So if somebody had ducks, for example, in my neighborhood, it would be a great occasion to have fodder for these ducks. And that's it. So I don't kill slugs. I don't collect them. I just don't use any chemicals. I just feed them. So they are totally interested in my in the cabbage, and they are not interested in beans. And the beans grew very well, and it had pods, and we had the harvest and so on. And the same idea and the same rule concerns ants, all the ants. We didn't have any other pests, but ants were very keen on eating apples. So we put cut, sliced apples, all these rotten apples that fall down from our trees, and they were gathering around these apples. So that's it. And this is Chwastożercy. It's the name of my brand. That in YouTube and on Facebook you have the more more visuals. So that's all.
Thank you so much, Anna. Anna is from Poland, and she is a big bean collector and made already
No, not so big.
yeah. But I heard she has a really nice stories to tell, and we will soon, publish a video with her and her special bean. So it's an eagle bean. So we will, you could be curious of this. It's a really nice story. Thank you so much, Anna.
Thank you.
So we come back to my favorite bean, actually, and it's like a do-it-yourself bean because she is very special. She has her own bodyguards, and it's called it's a lima bean, and she's originally from South America. And I read about her a lot because many scientists already researched on this bean because she's so special. Next slide, please. And she has, as you know, beans or all plants, they orientate with scents a lot. And this special one has a lot of sense components, and she works with it. So it's not a really overbreeded bean. It's really, I think it's a more original bean. It's not a wild bean, but I think it's not commercially breeded, and therefore it's has a lot of compounds still, and it's if you're interested in planting it, it's very easy to plant. Even here in Berlin on a balcony, it's perfect. It gives you a lot of beans, and the beans are so clever. So next slide, please, because it has many strategies to defend himself. And because if the beans, if the plant, the lima bean plant gets bitten by an insect, it right away releases a cloud of sand, and this will warn already the neighbors. And after a while, after 3 or 4 hours, it reproduces a new sand bouquet. And this attracts actually beneficial insects to fight these attackers. Then next slide, please. And it's not only that the bean realizes that it has been bitten by something, it also knows who has bitten it. It's from the taste of the saliva. And so it will send with his different scents, or he calls with different scents, helps for help. And for example, for the spider mite, it calls another mite, which will attack the spider mite. And there also is the caterpillars. It's not so nice here. So the caterpillars, the wasp will call, so they lay their eggs inside the caterpillars, and the larvae will eat from within. So the caterpillar, so it's not so nice, but that's the strategy. And it has, next slide please, a third strategy, and that's also very interesting because the bean produces nectar, and usually the flower produces nectar. But here, if it's attacked, the nectar is produced in a special, between the stem and the leaf stalk. So these will attract actually the ants, and these will also help to clean it from other pests. So that's really, it's a good combination, and maybe if you are interested, you should really try it out. These beans, I had it actually here, I did nothing, and they were so healthy till the end. So it's really good bean option to try. So we have next, it's Salvatore. Salvatore, yes. Oh, nice to have you here again. Salvatore is also
I just got my screen off.
Yeah, can you share it?
No, I don't have any slide to show.
Okay, we have one slide actually. This slide, I put it also in the presentation. It's gone. Oh, it's not there anymore. Sorry.
It's okay. We had a long presentation about the role of mixtures, and therefore on this occasion I can be very short. First of all, what is a mixture? Is simply if you have, for example, 5 different varieties of beans, you take a little bit of seed of each of these 5 varieties, you put them in a bowl, you mix them, and then you plant it. And this is a mixture. The science behind mixtures is very old. The first paper was published in 1929. Not much work has been done on legumes, but interestingly enough, most of the work on mixtures have been done on self-pollinated crops, such as rice, wheat, and barley, and therefore the conclusions of all this research is applicable to the self-pollinated legumes. And in the context of this discussion, disease resistance has been the most frequently trait which has been studied in mixture. There are several papers showing the advantages of a mixture in controlling diseases. And for that matter, also insect. Now, this is a form of resistance which is completely different from genetic resistance, because the main mechanism is the difficulties that the spore of the fungi causing a disease have in going from one plant to another plant when these plants are all different. And therefore, you will always have some damage, but at the crop level, the development and the spreading of the disease is so slow that meantime, while the disease has got all these difficulties in getting around, the crop is growing, you harvest it, and therefore you do have some damage, but it's so limited that it doesn't justify any chemical treatment. Now, evolutionarily speaking, this is tremendously important because you allow the your enemy, what you consider to be your enemy, the fungus which is causing the disease, to grow and develop, and therefore it does not need to evolve in a more aggressive race. So you maintain the population of the disease more or less at the same level, with a very small probability that new races will appear. And therefore, you don't have the problem that you have with the introduction of the completely disease-resistant varieties, or with, for example, OGM. I was mentioning that there have been very little work on legumes. One exception is the fly, which was mentioned by Dr. Amanuel from Ethiopia. That bean fly called maggot is also very common in Uganda. And in Uganda, there have been two publications of a very interesting experiment in which they've been mixing, given that Ugandan farmers like to grow mixtures anyway, they've been reducing considerably the incidence of diseases in this mixture by introducing a certain percentage of a resistant variety. The presence of resistant variety in a mixture of disease susceptible slows down the development of the disease, and therefore the problem is solved. Now, a slightly different strategy, which has been working very well in rice and can be applied to legumes as well, is to plant different varieties with different levels of resistance in adjacent strips, so that in case that particular farmer or that particular farming system is oriented to a market which is expecting uniformity, you can still harvest the separate varieties as uniform, but those varieties which are uniform in the market are coming from a field where they were grown in a system full of diversity, and therefore is a system which protects itself from diseases. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Salvatore. Great to have you here with us. So I see the time is quite yeah, it's almost over. But if you have questions, please. Yeah.
So there. Thank you, Nicolas answered some questions directly in the chat, but there was a question from Ria Puter. And she says, we are thinking to plant Vicia faba as cover crops beneath orange trees. Is it also susceptible for pests or fungi? And I think this was a question for Werner. Yes, if anyone else of the speakers wants to answer that question, feel free.
Werner or Johann? Are you still with us? No.
Sorry, yes, I had to put my microphone back on. Yes, there are fungi. I don't know what diseases they cause in your country, actually, but in Germany, where I am, faba beans are actually kind of, a kind of extensive grown crop. So we don't apply like fungicides or or other plant protection agencies. So I don't think it's that kind of problem in your case.
Thank you so much. And I saw one question that was about the Lima bean, because I was promoting so much the Lima bean, and this is actually you can buy seeds already also in Germany. So there are some small companies who sell it. So if you are interested in it, you can contact me and I give you the address. So as we see, the time is quite far, so maybe everybody's a bit tired because we got so much input and so much. We took a tour, scientific, and until out to the kitchen garden. So it was a lot of insights. So I hope you found also for you some solutions for your planting the beans in your garden or on the field. So if you still have questions, please contact us Global Bean team, and we can connect with the speakers.
There was one more question about marigold, and if any gardener has tried marigold regarding pests, and that's a question from Sergio Iopolo.
Mm-hmm.
So has anyone used marigold and tried it out? And does it work?
Hello.
Eva.
Yes. Hello, Eva.
Yes. I have marigolds growing around the vegetable beds, and pests will come onto the marigolds in preference to some of the plants. So especially good for tomatoes. They also give off a very good scent, which will attract the pests onto the marigolds rather than onto the flowering plants. So yeah, very, very good idea to use marigolds in between your vegetables.
Thank you so much, Eva. That's great. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone.
Yes. Yeah, it was nice to have you here all. I think it was a good input session. So and it was nice that you joined us until the end. We we are a bit late now. So, but yeah. Bye-bye.
Hopefully you know how to deal with your bugs and pests. Goodbye.